Good morning, everyone. Welcome to AI Minute Mondays, where I take a couple of minutes each Monday to demystify AI for everyone. Joining me in this week's session is Roman Jones, who's a security champ and a senior software engineer at Microsoft within the Fast Track team. So, Roman, you and I have worked together on one of the early hackathon projects where we built Doculingo, which is a document translation service, which is both context sensitive as well as it was leveraging some of the OpenAI APIs. But before we begin to talk about that, can you share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me today, Suchi. Um, yes, for me, I've actually been in the industry for over 20 years at this point. Initially, I was a self-taught software or programmer, right? And then I went back to school and got my degree and moved into more of a traditional software engineering role. Currently at Microsoft, I'm a senior service engineer. And so I get to work on a lot of these different proof of concepts, just like we did with Doculingo, which was a lot of fun. So glad to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Roman. So let's talk a little bit about Doculingo. So when we started off, we were experimenting a lot with the standard Azure APIs which are available. So can you walk us through what those APIs offer out of the box and how well do they perform for real world translation tasks?
Yeah, so in our scenario, we were actually looking at the ability to translate documents in batches, right? And so we had several different document types, ranging from Word documents to PowerPoints, PDFs, even some image files. And one of the things that we needed to do was translate those documents into different languages, and obviously all at the same time. And so we actually targeted the Azure, what was it, the AI translation service, and we targeted the batch, and we actually wrapped some code around it so that we could translate the same batch into multiple languages at the same time. So.
Thank you. That's great. So, how did the document translation happen? Like, was it very effective with the out-of-the-box APIs, or were there some kind of learnings that we had as we went along and we were using the out-of-the-box APIs?
Yeah, I mean the out of the box experience was decent for what we needed to do, but it didn't quite align with just our strategic vocabulary within our organization. And so at that point, we decided it was time to start looking into uh, building a custom translator that would allow us to actually leverage the power of our organization's vocabulary and still be able to provide the translations that we were looking for our customers.
Thanks, Roman. So, basically, what we understand is there's a need for context in document translation. So, can you elaborate a little bit more in terms of how did you kind of build in this context, or as you call it, the organization's vocabulary, into what we were sending across in our custom translator so that it could understand our organization's specific terms and terminology and translate it accordingly?
Yeah, so basically what we ended up having to do at that point was we had previously had other documents that we had that were translated, partially for items that were available publicly for like Microsoft, or learn.microsoft.com. And so we were actually able to take some of those documents that we've previously done and use those to effectively create or train our custom translator so that it was able to understand once we applied the logic from the translation to that vocabulary as well as things got translated. And so the process is somewhat extensive. Generally you have to have about 10,000 lines of translation to basically you pair from one language to another. So whatever your source to target to be able to train, and then once you get that those 10,000 lines, then you can then apply that to the translations themselves.
Thank you. That is super interesting. And thanks for sharing this information, Roman. What about the different document formats? Like, if we have documents which are not in, let's say, one of the supported formats. So would you kind of go about ensuring that you can still translate these documents?
Yeah, at the time when we were working on it, one of the document types that we had that we needed was the Visio diagrams, and at the time, the translation service wasn't compatible with Visio docs, and so what we actually did was we wrote some code on the back end to leverage the Visio libraries and use that to then export or convert those documents into a supported format, which we use PDF at that point. And then we were able to then feed those documents in as well. And so it actually worked out really well because we no longer had that limitation.
Thank you. That is super interesting, Roman, and thanks for sharing this. To summarize, what you've listed out so effectively is that the out-of-the-box translation APIs, they're great, but when it comes to domain-specific documents and your organization's language, where context is really important, that's where they might miss the mark. And this is where creating and building or your own custom translator comes in handy, because it's able to understand your organization's context and domain, and then it's able to do a much better job of a translation. And possibly that's basically the difference between what's just good enough to what's production grade, right?
Right.
So thank you, and thank you for joining me in AI Minutes. And that's all that we have this week. And thanks, everyone. Bye.
Right. Thanks, Suchi.